India today has accessed the Air India compensation forms, where Air India has asked Kin to disclose financial dependency on victims. Let me take you through some of those questions that are stated in this form, where Air India is asking, was the victim employed? Question number 2, was the victim self-employed? Question number 3, final compensation based on information shared by the kin. So that is how Air India is now deciding how much compensation to grant to whom, basis what the financial independence and dependability of the closest kin on the victim was. How fair is it? What are the kind of reactions that are coming in? We continue to track all of that. And has this earned any backlash? Air India that had announced a compensation of 1 crore rupees for the next of kin of those who had lost their lives in the deadly Ahmedabad plane crash. While that is what had come to light so far, Air India has taken this a step further, a form that is being asked to be filled by the families of the deceased. And what is Air India trying to find out in these forms? The financial dependency on the victim. Let me cut across to Nalini joining us on the phone line with further details. Nalini, firstly, is this fair practice? Have other airlines ever done this in the past? What do we know of cases of similar nature? Secondly, if Air India is trying to find out the financial dependency, are they going to increase the compensation for those families who weren't financially independent and were solely dependent on the victim? What is the motive of this exercise?
Well, Sriisha, Air India on their part maintains that all these are procedural formalities and nothing outward has been done with regard to compensation payments. But now what has happened is that we've accessed the form that was sent by Air India to these families, asking them to fill it. And this questionnaire specifically asks the families to disclose how many family members were financially dependent on the deceased who lost their lives in the AI-171 crash. Not just that, they go on to say that they should also disclose the details of the employment of the deceased person, which includes what his occupation was, who was his employer. They've asked for the name, address and telephone number of the employer itself. What the lawyers are alleging is that this has been done to reduce the amount of compensation that Air India is supposed to give. Interestingly enough, Suesha, right at the very top in this form, Air India themselves have clearly mentioned that details from this form will be used to determine what the final amount of the compensation will be, which leads us to believe that there is a strong relation between the details that the families are being asked to share with the final amount that Air India will give to them as a compensation. Now, it remains to be seen how this case progresses further in the coming days as to whether or not these families will officially file a suit for enhanced compensation against Air India. But for now, their lawyers have advised them to not fill this form and not give these details to Air India, so as to not allow them to determine the compensation on the basis of these details.
Nalini, again, I'm really wanting to understand how the families of the deceased are looking at a form like this to be filled, because no amount of money can ever pay for the loss that has been caused to them. And irrespective of what the financial dependability will be, it further causes hurt clearly for the families that Air India now takes it on themselves to decide how much compensation to grant to whom. So are they trying to say that for families who are doing well and were not dependent on the victim, are not privy to any of that compensation? Air India is saying that they have already paid 47 families, more are in process. But the kin who are saying that Air India pressurized them over compensation claims. In fact, the lawyer who has also said that the victim's kin were threatened into signing these forms forcibly, and the kin were asked to show their dependency for compensation. It is just disheartening to understand what these families are already going through, given the loss that they face. Nalini.
Well, Suesha, what we can tell our viewers is that under the Montreal Convention, Air India is obligated to pay the families according to the calculation that is done through a unit called special drawing rights. Now, according to that, the calculation is coming to about 1.8 crores per person. The family is supposed to get the payment of at least 1.8 crores per person. Out of this, 25 lakhs, we're given to understand, has to be given by Air India as an advance payment. So this form has been given for the families for the payment of that advance payment, that 25 lakhs amount. And in fact, Air India has gone on to say that until unless this form is filled, the families will not be able to claim that advance payment that they might need for immediate expenses. Now, as to whether or not Air India is actually going to go ahead and use this information to reduce the compensation amounts that are being claimed by these families is something that remains to be seen, because there is no confirmation, I beg your pardon, from Air India stating that any compensation amount is going to be reduced by them. But at the same time, it's a major allegation that the lawyers are making. And like I told you, we have to wait and see whether or not any suit for enhanced compensation will be filed, because ultimately it's going to be determined by a court of law exactly how much amount of compensation needs to be given to each of the victims in the Air India 171 crash.
Very rightly said, Nalini, and the word of the families will really matter here, because they are already going through a lot and wondering if this will further lead to backlash against Air India. We continue to track all those details. For the moment, thank you for joining us.